Hello everybody, it's Jansaurus. Here we focus on budget Magic the Gathering, and today I'm bringing you a Geralf Visionary Stitcher budget commander deck. So I thought it'd be fun to take one last look at Crimson Vow before we look on to Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, and I feel like Geralf is a very good way to end off of Innistrad because he is a very iconic character from Innistrad. He has a lot of history with the plane itself. So I thought he'd be a very fun commander to finish off with. He's also a very underrated commander. He does a lot more than what people give him credit for, but I feel like he's just underpowered enough to where people don't want to waste their removal on him a lot of the times. They'll want to use it on something a little bit more threatening. So at least this way we can facilitate our game plan, and the way that we're going to win this game is we're going to overwhelm our opponents with the big zombies that we create. We're going to hopefully fly over them and win the game through combat damage. So this deck has a little bit of zombie synergy, not a whole lot, mostly just blue creature synergy, and then just has a lot of creatures with some that are really thick, so the best way to do that is to have walls in your deck. I do have a few walls in here. I tried to focus on the walls that had some secondary effect, like the scrying or giving you a treasure token. So it just gives you a little bit more added value. And we also have a little bit of graveyard shenanigans, not a whole lot, but mostly trying to get value out of the creatures that are in our graveyard that we've already sacrificed. So it just gives us a little bit more to play with. So anyways, let's start off. Geralf Visionary Stitcher, 2 and a blue, human wizard. Zombies you control have flying. You can pay blue and tap, sacrifice another non-token creature, create a XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So that's why we are focusing on really thick creatures, just to get the most we can out of some creatures that not a whole lot of people normally play. Alright, first off we're going to start off by ramping up. We got Burnished Heart, pay 3, sacrifice Burnished Heart, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Ornithopter of Paradise has flying, taps, adds 1 mana of any color. Silver Mirror, taps, add blue to your mana pool. Heraldic Banner, as Heraldic Banner enters the battlefield, choose a card. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0, and then you can tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. We're going to choose blue. There's literally no reason not to choose blue in this deck. And the bonus for this is that all of the creature tokens that we produce, or all of the zombie creatures, are blue zombie creatures, so they also get the bonus from Heraldic Banner. So this is probably our best mana rock in this deck in this case. Then we have Kefnit's Monument. Blue creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, tap creature. Target creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So this can lock down I guess Golos is banned, but it can lock down a utility creature, a mana dork, something to just slow your opponent just a little bit more so we can get to some of our bigger creatures and run them over with. Next we have Midnight Clock. I love this card, absolutely favorite mana rock, especially in blue. Taps to add a blue mana, 2 and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards, and then you exile Midnight Clock. So I know a lot of people don't like giving up what they have in their hand, but 9 times out of 10, getting a fresh 7 cards in your hand and possibly recycling some of the stuff that, some of the better stuff that you have in your graveyard, can really make a difference in this game, and I cannot recommend Midnight Clock enough. Next up, we have Mind Stone. Taps to add a colorless. You can pay 1 and tap to sacrifice Mind Stone. You draw a card. Sky Diamond. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it can tap for a blue mana. And now we're going to go on to some of our card draw. So, first up we have Wind Reader Sphinx. It has flying. Whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. Behold the Multiverse. Scry 2, then draw 2 cards. And it also has Foretell for 1 and a blue. We have Brainstorm. Draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Commence the End Game is more of our late game draw engine, or draw spell. The spell can't be countered, which is honestly a little bit... I don't know if anyone would really counter this too much, but the fact that it just doesn't give them the option at least makes the 6 mana a little bit more worth paying for. So first off, you draw 2 cards, then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Again, this is a zombie token for free. Our commander will give it flying, so it'll give us a little bit more to play with as well. Next up we have Opt. It has Scry, draw a card. Thirst for Discovery, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a basic land. All but 2 of our lands in this deck are actually basics. You'll see those a little bit later. And then we have Gate to the Afterlife. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, gain 1 life, and then you may draw a card. If you do discard a card, this just gives us a little bit of card filtering, a little bit of looting effect going on. And then you can also pay 2 to sacrifice Gate to the Afterlife, search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a card named God Pharaoh's Gift, and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it, activate this ability. If there are 6 or more creature cards in your graveyard. So, we'll get to God Pharaoh's Gift. It is just a great way to get added bonuses off of your creatures that you're already sacrificing, and it's just a really great way to reuse those enter the battlefield triggers, especially since they are now zombies. So Chart of Course, another great draw card, especially since we're trying to be moderately aggressive. Draw 2 cards and discard a card unless you attacked with a creature this turn. So worst case scenario, you're semi-looting. Could be better, but the fact that we're attacking probably 70% of our turns, more than likely you'll be able to draw a card off of this. Next up we have Distant Melody. Choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. More than likely we're going to go with zombies, but occasionally you can go with walls and you might actually get a little bit more out of this. Preordained, scry 2, then draw a card. Treasure Cruise, again, just taking a little bit of advantage of the stuff that we're sacrificing. Draw 3 cards for the delve cost. Next up we have Winged Words. The spell costs 1 less if you control a creature with flying. Again, all of our zombie tokens automatically get flying. Reconnaissance Mission. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. It also has cycling. More than likely, you do not want to waste this card on a cycling. Halimar Depths. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back into any order, and then it can also tap to add a blue mana source. It isn't quite card draw, but it is card selection, and that can usually help us out pretty significantly, especially digging 3 cards deep into your deck. So I definitely appreciate that ability on a land. Curiosity Crafter, arguably one of our better draw engines in this deck. Reconnaissance Mission probably beats it out just a little bit. You have no maximum hand side, which can actually be pretty key in this deck. And then whenever a creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Like I said, we're going to be producing a ton of zombie tokens, so therefore we should be drawing a lot of cards off of those. Horde Scab has flying. Other zombies you control have flying, and whenever one or more zombies you control deal combat damage to one or more of your opponents, you may draw cards equal to the number of opponents dealt damage this way. If you do, discard that many cards. Again, a looting effect off of a creature. It's really nice to have, honestly. Just maybe dump quite a few lands into your graveyard, and then maybe draw a few more gas. We are playing pretty low on the curve, and so that is why we have so many draw effects to kind of keep our gas going. And one thing that I'd like to point out, this does have a zombie anthem where they gain flying again. This is just in case if we do lose our commander, we don't lose the flying ability. It is actually a very, very key word to have in this deck. It just gives us so much more to go with. And next category is Sir Mix-a-Lot. Due to the thick creatures, first off we got Aegis Turtle. It's a 1 mana 05. Just couldn't be easier for this deck, honestly. Biolume Egg has Defender, and when Biolume Egg enters the battlefield, scry 2. When you sacrifice Biolume Egg, return it to the battlefield, transform under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So, Biolume Egg, you sacrifice it with Geralf. You then get Biolume Serpent, which is a 4/4 serpent that has sacrificed 2 islands, and it can't be blocked this turn. You will probably never use that, so you get 2 4/4s for essentially 1 mana ability. That is an absurd value. Absolutely love it. And then, honestly, probably my favorite card in this deck is Sherix, the Raging Isle. Spells your opponent's cast that target Sherix costs 2 more to cast, so it has Pseudo Ward, and then it has pay 3. Sherix gets +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. Sherix is just here to sacrifice to Geralf and then just get an absolute monster of a zombie token. Having a 17/17 zombie can definitely put the pressure on any of our opponents. So highly recommend this card. Honestly, my favorite personal card in this deck. I have a soft spot for Sherix. Next up we have Corridor Monitor. When Corridor Monitor enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. So what you want to do with this card is tap Geralf, sacrifice something else, play Corridor Monitor, untap Geralf, and then sacrifice possibly Corridor Monitor with Geralf. And that way you get 2 activated abilities instead of just 1, giving you double the amount of tokens. Next up is Cleaver Scab. Pay 3 to tap, sacrifice another zombie, create 2 tokens that are copies of the sacrificed creature. So the way that this is worded is that since we are creating zombie tokens, we could then pay 3, sacrifice this, and literally double the amount of token that or double the token that we sacrificed. So if we have a 4/4 zombie token, sacrifice this with Cleaver Scab after it attacked, and now you just literally doubled your tokens for 3 mana. Just a really good, just another way to get extra value out of our creatures. Highly recommend it. Now, next up is a very great card, in my opinion, that I feel like is mostly underrated in a lot of decks, is Crashing Drawbridge. Defender, and you can tap it. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. That can be huge with some of our zombie tokens, because you do have to wait till your upkeep to attack with those normally. And this is just a great example of a wall and a defender that does something else than just sit there. So next up we have, I'm going to butcher this, crenellated wall. Target creature gets +0/+4 until end of turn for just tapping this thing. So that just literally just gives us essentially 4 +1/+1 counters on the zombie token that we would have already, or wouldn't have, that we were going to create anyways, just for tapping this thing. Honestly, just gives us a little bit more value and more bang for our buck. Highly recommend it. Okay, next up is Dragon Eyes Savants. First up, it has Morph, and to pay its Morph cost, reveal a blue card in your hand. As you can see, 90% of our cards are blue, so we should not have a problem with this at all. And when Dragon Eyes Savants is turn face up, look at target opponent's hand. So it starts off as a 2/2. You morph it for pretty much free, and then you just can look to see if the combo player is about to go off. You can see if anyone's gonna kill your big Charks token, or if someone's just about to just go off with Paradox Engine. Absolutely, just sorry to rant here, but I absolutely hate that card. So it gives you a lot more information. It's very versatile, and you can see whether or not someone is close to winning the game, and go from there. Eternal Skylord. When it enters the battlefield, you amass 2. It's not that thick of a creature. It's just a very nice creature to have in this deck, honestly. Zombie tokens you control have flying. Like I said, just another way to prevent you from losing that ability. That I feel like is an ability that people underrate on Geralf. So next up, we have a really interesting card. It has Floodgate. The first line of text just absolutely baffles me. I don't believe there's a card that is like this. If Floodgate gains flying, sacrifice it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that's a very, very unique line of text there. The next one is if Floodgate leaves play, it deals to each non-blue creature without flying 1 damage for each 2 islands you control. So if you have 4 islands, you sacrifice this, it does 2 damage to each non-blue creature and non-flying creature. Careful, you may lose 1 or 2 of your ramp pieces with this. Silver Mirror is obviously a pretty easy target for this card, but other than that, there is 1 or 2 other walls that are for toughness that you might want to look out for, so that you hopefully don't kill. So be careful playing this around 8, turn 8 or so, just in case. But it is a very unique effect for especially blue to just do widespread damage. I feel like it's a very unique card, and this is the perfect deck for it, because when Geralf actually sacrifices it, it triggers this ability. So it's a very fun and unique card that you might not get to play with otherwise. Next one is Glacial Wall. This is one of the few defenders that's just a defender. Next up, we have Gleaming Barrier. Has defender. When Gleaming Barrier dies, create a treasure token. Again, just that extra added value can go a long ways. Haven Goal Runebinder. Pay 2 and a blue, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, then put a +1/+1 counter on each zombie creature you control. If it just had the first line, or the first couple lines, it would not be that important to this deck. But the fact that you can buff your entire field, more or less, just for sacrificing something that, or exiling something out of your graveyard that you've already sacrificed, such a good card in this deck. Absolutely would not recommend whatsoever not running this card in this type of deck. Next up, we have Sailor of Means. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Again, getting an enter into the battlefield effect, getting an extra treasure token, and then sacrificing it just gives it that much more value to me than if it was just a slightly bigger creature. Wall of Frost, 1 blue, defender. When Wall of Frost blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Just gives us a little bit more durability. People are way less likely for us to attack us, knowing that whatever they throw at us, their best creature is going to get locked down for an extra turn. Can be a pretty big incentive not to come at us in the first place. And this is a card I definitely want to highlight here. All of these big toughness creatures, you don't have to sacrifice right away. You can wait a turn or two, keep them up, and make sure that you are nice and safe before you start going on the offensive. That's something I just want to reiterate. You can use these walls as walls. Like, mind blown right there, right? But like, you can use these big heavy creatures to just protect yourself before you get your game plan established. That part of it, I feel like, is often overlooked because people just want the quick win, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Next up, we have Wall of Runes. Has defender. When it enters the battlefield, you scry 1. Just gives you that much more card advantage, especially for 1 mana. It's a pretty solid card in this deck. Wall of Tears. If Wall of Tears blocks any creatures, return each of those creatures to their owner's hands at the end of the combat. Absolutely amazing. A huge incentive to attack someone else is to just have to pay that mana cost again. And you can use this as a political tool. If someone has a Ravenous Chupacabra or something that has a really solid enter the battlefield trigger that won't kill this, you can offer for them to attack you, and you say you'll block with this Wall of Tears, so they get that additional enter the battlefield trigger. So this can be used as a political tool, and I think those types of cards are underrated in Commander. The fact that you can take a wall and make it a political tool is a very fun and interesting thing, and that's why I love this format so much. So I don't want you guys to forget about that little extra spice in this deck. Next up, we're going into some utility creatures. We have Profaner of the Dead. It has Exploit. When Profaner of the Dead exploits a creature, return to their owner's hands all creatures your opponents control with toughness less than the exploited creature's toughness. Depending on what card you just exploited, this could pretty much be a Cyclonic Rift for 4 mana. Let's say you chose Charix. That can literally return anything else on the field. Blightsteel Colossuses don't matter. Eldrazi's are your only thing that might be big enough, but I believe that even Eldrazi's would be returned to hand. Most Eldrazi's anyways would be returned to hand if you sacrifice a Charix to Profaner of the Dead. Highly recommend this card. It can, like I said, it's a very cheap Cyclonic Rift for this deck. Next up, we have Scourge of the Fleets. When it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponent's control with toughness X or less to their hand, where X is the number of islands you control. Again, this can be a Cyclonic Rift if you're late enough in the game. I mean, you're already paying 7 mana for it, so you might actually be there. Repository Scab, you can exploit. When it exploits a creature, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. There are some really good instants and sorceries that you may want. In worst case scenario, there are a few other amass tokens and or other zombie tokens, like the little 2/2s that are created when you put +1/+1 counter on your creatures. There's a few other, I don't want to say free creatures to sacrifice, but there's less valuable creatures. And next up is Stormtide Leviathan. Has Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to their other types, and creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. While this does shut down some of our non-zombie creatures, a majority of our zombie creatures are going to have flying, so Stormtide Leviathan has very little risk to us ourselves, and can honestly just shut down a lot of other decks, depending on what they're running. Last 2 utility creatures that we have, Vizier of the Tumbling Sands. You can tap and untap another target permanent, just gives you a little bit extra value with our commander. So hopefully you can get 2 tokens per turn if you really want that. And it also does have cycling, where you can just trade this in if you're really digging for a certain card, but it also has untapped target permanent on it as well when you cycle it. So it does give you a little bit more variety to go with, but mostly you're going to want to play this to get the 2 creature tokens. And this next card is an interesting pick. I love this card in my blue decks, but what it is Wonder, flying. As long as Wonder is in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control have flying. This is just a really easy creature to just get rid of. You actually want this in your graveyard because then all of your creatures have flying instead of just your zombies, which can come in handy, but more often than not, it's just another way to ensure that our zombies can get in for some easy damage. Okay, we're going to go into some of our utility spells. First off, we have Aetherize. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. This just really prevents any crackbacks that we have. It just is a really powerful deterrent if they know that we are playing this. Compelling Deterrence has an instant, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, then that player discards a card if you control a zombie. Really mean if it's late in the game and they have that one card in their hand that they've been holding on to. They finally play an Ulamog, and you're like, nope. And then they have to discard it. It's really, really mean when that happens. And it's just honestly a really good value card for this deck. Next up is Disdainful Stroke. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Most likely win conditions are going to be more than 4 CMC. And here's your answer for it. Next up is Dive Down. Target creature you control gets +0/+3 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Can protect a key creature or maybe a giant zombie Sharix token. Protects that before it gets in, before it gets removed. Protects our commander. There's just a lot of versatility for it. In worst case scenario, we make a bigger token with it. Not really much of a downside on that one. Next up is Lazotep Plating. It has amass 1. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. This can protect our entire board. More than likely, it's just going to protect a key creature that is about to be removed. Negate, counter target non-creature spell. Again, a little bit more protection for whichever we have, whether it's our commander or a big zombie token. Perplexing Test. I love this card in token decks. Choose one. Return all creature tokens to their owner's hand, or return all non-token creatures to their owner's hand. So if someone else is playing a creature token deck, we can use this and not make and hold off on making our zombie tokens and just absolutely destroy their game plan. Or more than likely, we'll have this and we'll play it in when we go for a kill on someone with all of our zombie tokens. More than likely, it's going to be the second effect that we're going for, but I do want to reiterate, if you do happen to be going against a Krenko deck or some human token variant, this would be a very good way to, I don't want to say outpace them, but more so punishing them for overextending is what I'm trying to say. Next up, we have Reality Shift. Exile target creature. Its controller manifests the top card of their library. Just a really good spot removal spell for anything on the field. Next up, we have Resculpt. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller gets a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Again, just a really solid form of removal. Next up, we have Shell Shield. With Kicker 1. Target creature you control gets +0/+3 until end of turn. If this was kicked, that creature also gains hexproof until end of turn. It is very easy to give this hexproof. Again, worst case scenario, you're giving something +0/+3, sacrificing it, and then getting a slightly bigger zombie. Not really much of a downside on here. I do like to keep it mostly for the additional protection. Thirst of Discovery is in here twice for some reason. I guess I thought I just thought it was that good of a card. It is a solid draw spell. I'll give it that, especially in this deck. I apologize for that. I don't know why I have it in 2 spots. God Pharaoh's Gift. 7 mana artifact at the beginning of your combat on your turn. You may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. It gains haste until end of turn. So the good thing about God Pharaoh's Gift is that it gives the zombie token haste. Bad thing is it is a black zombie that does come up with a few things like Heraldic Banner, but more than likely it will be okay, especially since it still gets flying. One thing I do want to put out is if you do not have your zombie tokens having flying at the moment, Floodgate could kill your God Pharaoh's Gift zombies. Just a little friendly reminder, be careful that can happen. But it is very unusual for you not to have flying in this deck. Curse of the Swine, X blue blue, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller gets a 2/2 green boar creature token. Just a really solid mass removal spell. Hour of Eternity. Exile X target creatures from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Again, it's a token, it's a zombie token. More than likely I'll get flying. It is a black zombie token. Again, be careful with that very niche circumstance, but it can happen. Again, this is a great card for late in the game when you want to get a little bit more recursion out of, or not recursion, value out of your graveyard. Next up, we have Raven Form. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. It also has a foretell cost of a blue mana. Great card. Absolutely amazing spot removal. Just like I said, a really solid card. The only thing I have a complaint about is that it does technically give them a flying blocker, but you should be able to run over that fairly easy. Aura of Domination, or sorry, misread that. Dominion. You can pay 1, tap an untapped creature you control, untap enchanted creature. You're going to want to stick this on our commander and possibly be able to create a humongous zombie army in one turn with this card. More than likely you don't want to overextend that much, but it is an option. Crab Umbra for 1 CMC enchant creature, and then you can pay 2 and a blue. Untap enchanted creature, and it also has totem armor, so if that creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. Just gives our commander a little bit more protection, honestly. It's just a really good card, especially in this deck. Just like I said, gives our commander a little bit more protection, and it's also a great way to extend our plays and make our board bigger with our zombie tokens. Next up, we have Favorable Winds. Since we do have so many ways to give our zombie tokens flying, a little bit of flying synergy is going to help out a lot. Creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. And then we have a little bit of flavor here. Imprisoned in the Moon, enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. Enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap, add colorless, and lose all other card types and abilities. This card is brutal. I love the amount of utility that this card gives. They do still get a tiny bit of value off of it, but just placing this on a commander doesn't let them automatically remove it. It just makes it a land, and then their commander's a land. There's literally nothing they can do unless they take care of this enchantment. You can play this on a Blightsteel Colossus, just make it honestly absolutely useless for what they're trying to use it for. It's just a very solid removal spell, and it hits so many different things. If someone has a Gaia's Cradle for some reason and you play this, it's gonna hurt them so bad. I would probably cry if someone imprisoned in the Moon my Gaia's Cradle. I do not own one for very good reasons. That is way outside of any budget I will ever have for Magic the Gathering, honestly. But I would probably cry if someone did that to me. Just an absolutely brutal play. All right, so I want to go on to the value of this deck. With TCG Player, without shipping, this deck costs $26.33. Absolutely honestly a very, very cheap deck to put together. These walls, which are a fairly big chunk, and Sharks, because no one really plays Sharks as much as I love him, are usually pretty cheap because they only go in very certain decks, like an Arcady Sabbath deck, or a Dorian Short, or a Dorian Siege Tower deck. So there's very certain decks that actually like to play walls, but not very many to actually warrant an increase in price. So that's why this cost is so low for these. Card Kingdom came out to $43.77 at the time of the video, and the average deck, according to Card Kingdom, runs you around $137.60. So it's not as much of a savings as I would have liked for this deck, but it is saving you roughly anywhere from $100 to 90 some odd dollars. Honestly, just really good value in my opinion. It's a very underrated commander that I definitely appreciate. This is more my style of commander, not something super huge and flashy. Something just enough to fly under the radar for you to actually facilitate your game plans. Alright, next off we're going to go to the lore. First off, Geralf has a rivalry with his sister Gissa, who's in the top right corner. I do have a deck tech on her as well if you are interested in it. So the difference between the two is that Gissa resurrects bodies, while Geralf is a stitcher. So he sews body parts together to form scabs. If you go back in the video, there are a few creatures who are so-and-so scab, like I believe it's Horde Wing Scab or Hover Wing Scab is one of them. A lot of his cards that are built around Geralf are called scabs. It's just the name they have for it. So some interesting facts between the two is that they attacked their hometown of Thraben, actually overran it, eventually took it over, and that's where Gissa up until very, very recently, currently resided. And the most interesting thing that I absolutely love about these two is that there was a necromancy war with Gissa and Geralf. And the thing that I absolutely love about it is they would raise giant hordes of zombies their own particular way, have them fight in a location, and then they go home and like try to do it again. Just kind of funny, but like the thing that I love the most about it is that Geralf would go and make rules. I believe there was originally 5 rules, and it was like they have to be at a predetermined location, you can't attack bases, you can't do this, you can't kill spectators to increase your army, and this sort of thing. And then like Gissa found a magical sword, used it against him once, and then a 6th rule came in place: no magical swords. So, and then my favorite part about this is that Gissa doesn't care. She will constantly break rules if it gives her a 1-up on her brother, and I absolutely love it. Just a little funny side piece that I absolutely adore with this Necro War is that Geralf decided to make it civilized and make like a code of conduct, and just Gissa just does not care. Absolutely could not care less about the rules. Just a little bit of kind of really shows their character is what I'm trying to get at. So he's currently perfecting this craft with Ludwig. He's in the bottom right hand corner. He actually just got a recent card in, I want to say Midnight Hunt, but it's probably Crimson Vow off the top of my head. He's just teaching him a few things about stitching, and like I said, perfecting his craft. Ludwig is actually going a little bit nuts and losing his mind, and Geralf doesn't really care. He's just more concerned about perfecting his mastery over creating zombies. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And then to go back to Gissa, is while she was at Thraben, Wilhilt, who I've also done a deck tech on, is actually trying to vie for her attention, and Gissa isn't having it, and eventually gets bored, and then sends a letter attached to a zombie that she made that would just not stop screaming to her brother, and then it just says, "I'm moving in." No way to send a response whatsoever. She's just, "I'm moving in." So Gissa is now going to be living with her brother, more than likely, to much of his dismay. Just the little interactions between Geralf and Gissa is absolutely amazing. I adore these characters. I can definitely see why they're fan favorites, and why they'll more than likely be a permanent part of Innistrad. But that is the lore so far. Sorry that one's a little bit longer than usual. There's actually just quite a bit of lore between Gissa and Geralf, and a lot of it is actually just kind of very petty drama that I kind of enjoy in MTG lore a lot of times. Just the little simple things in life. Alright, like I said, this is the value. Thank you guys for watching. I very much appreciate all the support that I've been getting. If you like this commentary, go ahead and give a like, comment, and possibly subscribe. If you do not like it, feel free to downvote. It is a fair internet out here. I'm just really would like honest opinions, and I really am looking forward to this next set, honestly. I really do hope that you guys did enjoy this content, and I hope that you guys do return. Again, thank you guys so much.